Okay, so tonight is going to be a very important class, B'ezrat Hashem, like usual, but tonight's a very fundamental one because we're going to touch on the Yesod of the relationship between a teacher and a student and how it's really the most fundamental aspect of a person's life and his ability to connect to Hashem, his ability to become the tzaddik within him is all dependent on his ability to first be and to always be a student. So we're also going to see how all of these different elements we've learned so far in the class, which I'll give a little recap, they're all kind of disparate and disjointed seemingly when we first learned it. And that's the way this Torah goes. But now we're going to see it kind of all come together in a very beautiful, very Kabbalistic way. Okay, so everybody's going to have to put on their mind's eye to understand to the best of their ability this lesson, because we're going to be visualizing a letter in the Torah a lot tonight. Okay.
Pleasure.
So the recap is like this. For a person to get close to Hashem, he has to first be silent. What type of silence does he need to experience? The silence of embarrassment. That when a person comes and he embarrasses you, father, mother, sister, brother, friend, peer, child, whatever, everything. And it causes some type of inner turmoil within you. And instead of being mujik, that was good. Yeah.
Butchered a little bit.
Yeah, butchered a little bit. And you have to say something back. Why? Because if not, then you're a friar, you know? Yeah. Okay, so here's another paradigm shift from Rabbi Nachman. In almost every lesson, you're going to get a upside down flip on everything you ever thought you knew. That is literally, to be a man, we're going to learn, is to be silent. To not be a man is to talk. And I'm not just speaking in a metaphorical way. We're going to see that this is explicitly the teaching. That the concept of being what's called Adam in the Torah, which is the highest level of human being, who has the highest level of consciousness, he must experience and respond with silence in the face of adversity over and over and over and over again until he reaches the highest level, which is called Teshuvah. That's called the Keter. That's called the crown. That's called the light of the Ein Sof. And it's completely hidden. Rabbi Nachman started the Torah by saying something very deep. That is, that the concept of honor is something that must be investigated. So therefore, whenever a person is trying to gain esteem or honor from those around him, automatically he's going to have people who are questioning him. Because honor itself is limited. Everything that you want from somebody else is limited. And like we know from science, anything which is limited is bound to be investigated. But if you get to the point that you don't want any honor at all, because you're so full on the inside, because you've done teshuvah, and now instead you're very happy to simply be a vehicle, a revelation of pure godliness, something infinite. Now that you have become that vehicle for something that's infinite, you can't measure something that's infinite. And nobody will investigate you anymore. The paradigm we have for this is Moshe Rabbeinu. That even though along the way he was not looking for honor, but obviously to be the leader of the Jewish people, to take them out of Mitzrayim is a position of tremendous honor. And he got constantly challenged throughout his entire career of leadership. But ultimately at the end, they saw that the light that came out of his face, he had to cover it because it was so bright. He had to cover it with a mask. He needed to hide that light because he had attained Kavod Elohim.
Yeah. He wore a mask.
Yeah, he wore a mask. Okay. How do you get to the point that you can actually experience the light of Hashem? So this is the very famous teaching that we discussed last week, that Rabbi Nachman says you need to be baki, ratzo, you need to be baki, you need to be expert in running, and you need to be baki and shov, in returning. We learned this from the Malachim, that they were going up and down and up and down. So what does that mean for us? It means you need to know how to be inspired to go run after Hashem instead of running after the physical world. That's called running. But you also need to be able to, when the world knocks you back, when life happens to you, when you experience trials and tribulations and disturbances and difficulties and confusions like so often happens, you need to be able to know how to return. That means that you don't get completely wiped off the ground and retreat entirely, but instead you're able to hold the fort until the storm ends. That's becoming an expert in Shov. And because Rabbi Nachman says a Jewish person is going to have to continuously go back and forth between these two modes of engagement with the world, he's going to have to be expert in both in order to attain Kavod Elokim, in order to attain the Keter, the crown, the highest revelation of godliness. And then once you do so and you become expert in both, Rabbi Nachman says that Hashem will be holding his hands out like this for you with outstretched arms. This is what we've done so far together. Okay, we're clear? Now, you guys ready for a little Kabbalah? Pashit. There's 10 different vowel points in the Torah. These 10 vowel points are corresponding to the 10 sfirot. There's a vowel point where you see 2 and a 1, right? Then you have a vowel point with just the 2 dots. Then you have the patach, and you have the kamatz. Yeah, you know all the different. You have the segol, that is the 2. Yeah, very good. Okay. So in the context of this lesson, Rabbi Nachman is going to bring that when you are silent in the face of embarrassment, and you don't respond when people undermine you, or somebody questions you, or somebody challenges you, somebody's squeezing your ego, and you're silent, you have formed one of the vowel points. You have formed the chirik. The chirik is the 1 dot. Kemuva b'tikunim, because it's brought in tikuni Zohar, Rabbi Nachman says. V'tachat raglav kamaseh livnat hasapir. And under his feet, talking about Hashem, his feet was something like a sapphire brick. We actually, where does this come from? It comes from the revelation of Har Sinai. And the pasuk says there that we saw from Hashem's feet under it was something like a sapphire brick. We know Hashem does not have feet. And obviously there's a lot of Kabbalistic intonations with the pasuk itself. But there was something under his feet, and it looked like a sapphire brick. So what is this? So Tikuni Zohar says something very interesting. What they saw was a chirik. What they saw was the vowel point of the dot under Hashem's feet. What's the connection? Because if you think about a brick and you look at it further away, it starts to look like a dot.
Anything.
Yeah, anything. But specifically in this case, it's the brick. This is the simple understanding, but we're going to see it goes much deeper than that. That Hashem says the earth is the stool on which my feet sit. With me? This whole entire physical universe, everything in it, is not even called the feet of Hashem. It's just called the stool that he puts his feet on. That his feet itself, so to speak, even though he doesn't have feet in the way that we understand it, but this lowest extremity of us, which takes up very little space, in comparison to Hashem's feet don't even fit in the whole entire physical universe. The only thing that fits here is the stool that he puts his feet on. That stool is this world. This is the footstool. Okay? That's why he says, Va'ar Hadom Raglai. Rabbi Nachman points out, what's the word for stool? Hadom. Zebechina Demima. It comes from the word silent. That the concept of the footstool is the concept of being silent. That is to say like this. Rabbi Nachman's pointing out that there is a Kabbalistic phenomenon here. Yes. Phenomenon. Remember that? Okay.
I'm not bugging.
It's just a cereal.
Okay.
Okay. That is like this. We are trying to connect to Hashem. Hashem is infinite. We are finite. We live in a finite world. There's a problem. Yeah? Everybody see the problem? It's just a simple problem. Yeah. How do we connect? How do we connect? So this pasuk, Rabbi Nachman is reading that there's a secret here. Hashem is telling you, how do you connect to me? Because the earth is his footstool. Meaning to say that the beginning of you connecting to Hashem is to make yourself hadom, silent, like the footstool. And then Hashem could, so to speak, rest his feet on you. Meaning the beginning of the revelation of Hashem in your life, which is called his feet, it comes on you being silent. Now, if everybody can picture now the letter Aleph for a second. We know the Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. We know that according to Kabbalah, the world is created only with the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, all 22 letters. The first of those letters, which according to Kabbalah includes all the letters, is the Aleph. Okay? The Aleph is silent. There's three main aspects of the letter Aleph. There is a dot. There is a vav, a line, and there's another dot. There's a yud, there's a line, a vav, and there's a yud. If you add these up, a yud, a vav, and a yud, you get 26, the numerical value of Hashem's name, which is to show that Hashem, just like Hashem, you can't see him, just like you don't hear him speak, and at the same time, he's the foundation of all of reality. And also the word Aleph also comes from the word Aluf, which means that he is a teacher or a leader, that he is the main rabbi in the world, that everything that you're experiencing in your life and all the experiences that you're having is not what it looks like, that things are just happening. But in fact, because he's not a human being, he needs to use the footstool of the world to teach you constantly. So all of the experiences you have in your life is really the Aluf, the Aleph teaching you. If you take the letter Aleph and you break it down into its components, that is an Aleph, a Lamed, and a Pei, that's how you spell Aleph, you'll get 111, 111. To show the whole concept of the Aleph is oneness, is unity, complete oneness.
It can cancel itself out.
Also in mathematics, in the mathematical world, there is something called Aleph Nun, an actual sign Aleph, but we're not taught that in school. Everything else that we're taught.
It looks like a division, which cancels itself out because of the.
Oh, so there's actually a lesson in Rabbi Nachman's Torah that's very, very, very deep, very hard to understand. And it's talking about the collapsing of the Aleph, that the two dots collapse on each side and the Vav is folding. It's a very, very deep lesson. That's what the Shem will get there. Yeah. Okay. But now let's look at this Aleph and let's dissect it a little bit. You have the Yud, you have the Vav, and you have the Yud. This, we're saying that the Aleph is, so to speak, Hashem. How do you begin to experience Hashem? You need to be silent. So what is that point of connection to Hashem, that initial point of connection? It's the lower aspect of the Aleph. It's that first dot, that first point. Everybody with me? You can picture the Aleph in your head? I used to write out everything, but we don't have that right now. Can you guys do it? Everybody at home, you can picture the Aleph. You're looking at it. You're thinking about it. Okay. That's the dot. That's the dome. That's to be silent. That's the beginning of the experience of Hashem in your life. And that's why, like Benny said, the beginning of the revelation of godliness in every Jew's life always starts with bitul. Always starts with self-negation, with the dissolution of ego, with silence. For the one who embraces it, he gets to experience Hashem. For the one who resists it and runs away from it and fights, he never gets to experience the light of godliness. Because at every moment that he's fighting, the squashing of his ego, so as a result of that, he's making himself limited. And nothing limited can connect to something unlimited. Okay? Hanakuda Oyona, and the higher point, Sha'ala Aleph, that's on the Aleph, Zebechinat Keter. This is the concept of the Keter. So very simply like this, we have the 10 Sfirot. The highest point of the Sfirot is called the Keter, that's called the crown, it's called the unknowable head. It's the light of the Ein Sof. It's the light of the endless one. That's what we're trying to attain from this Torah. Then we have the point in which we begin to move towards the experience of that. And that is silence, submission. So right now, let's say I just rebuked Mike. Yeah? If he responds because he's a true Bukharian music. Yeah? So then what he's going to do is he's going to disconnect himself from Hashem.
Or he'll butcher you.
Yeah, or he'll butcher me, yeah. And then he'll sell me at his father's store.
That's why I said
Or
I'd buy that.
if he's silent instead, he has now entered what's called the Malchut. We're going to go back to the first lesson for a second in Likutei Moharan. We're explaining there that the Malchut, which is the lowest sphera, right, which is called kingship, which is the beginning of the revelation of godliness in somebody's life, it's compared to the moon. The moon, says the Zohar, has no light of its own. That's why it's able to reflect the light of the sun. So in this equation, the sun and the moon are in the letter Aleph. That the sun is like that higher point. The moon is like the lower point. We're going to see the Vav is like the sky, which connects them. Okay? How does the moon receive the light of the sun? If it started talking, meaning it started shining its own light, its own rocky climate, so it wouldn't be able to receive the light of the sun. It would be cut off. However, because it has no light of its own and it doesn't resist that reality, it embraces it. It's able to receive that light above it and shine off the light of the sun to everybody else at nighttime. That moon has no light of its own because the concept of Malchut is there's no light there. It's the only one of the 10 sefirot that's not actually a light of godliness. Its whole entire benefit, its whole entire maila, its beautiful quality is it has nothing. What does that sound like within the human psyche? What does that sound like within the human experience? Silence. So this thing that Rabbi Nachman's teaching us, that we should respond with silence to the events in our life, to the people who embarrass us or insult us or cause us to feel squeezed or impinged on, that what he's really doing is he's causing you to enter into the gates of Kedusha, to the gates of godliness. That by being silent, you turn yourself at that moment into the Malchut. Because the Malchut has nothing of its own.
That part is called the Moshe inside you?
That part's what?
That part is called the Moshe inside of you?
Not yet. That's called the Yoshua inside of you. We're going to see.
Mm-hmm. Isn't a higher level?
We're going to see. Okay. This higher point, though, which we're going to see is compared to the sun. So now, as opposed to the pasuk that we looked at from when we received the Torah, which is very interesting, by the way, because how we saw Hashem in Har Sinai, that we usually think about as the highest revelation that ever took place. It's something that blew us out of our bodies. What do we see under his feet?
Sapphire,
which we're saying is the Malchut. So it seems like what Rabbi Nachman's implying is that the greatest revelation that ever took place in history was still only the footstool of Hashem's feet. It was still nothing in comparison to Hashem himself, which is something that's very hard to fathom. It's unfathomable, okay? Now, there was a vision of Hashem, so to speak, the higher worlds. It was above the Rakia. It was above the sky. It was above Shamayim, the heavens. Asher al Rosham, that on their hands was an Evan Sapir. That this time, it was not a brick that was made out of sapphire. This time it's a sapphire stone. Demut kisei, and it was shaped like a kisei, like a throne. When Rabbi Nachman gave this lesson, he was sitting on his chair, and he grabbed his chair, and he started shaking. And everybody who was there was about to have an epileptic fit. As they saw their Rebbe start to seem like he was having some type of convulsive episode. But because Rabbi Nachman had attained such a high state of Yirat Hashem, like many of the Hasidic masters, especially the Baal Shem Tov, they used to say that when he was praying, he literally used to turn colors. That he would go from being in a complete, oh, hey guys, what's going on? And then like he starts praying. Yeah. and you just see like some type of crazy episode where he goes into a trance for about 4 or 5, 6 hours. And then they're like, you okay? You okay? Okay. And they can't wake him out, nothing. And they go, like, hey, what's going on? We're gonna have lunch. But in that whole time, he had experienced very high things. So too, Rabbi Nachman, which I read today that who was it? It was the teacher of Rav Chaim Kramer.
Rosen.
Rav Rosen. He said that when Rabbi Nachman was 6 years old, he was a tzaddik emet mamish. By the time he was 6 years old, he was a true tzaddik. And by the time that he reached 13 and he got married, he was actually greater than most people had been in prior generations. Okay? So at this point that they saw him, that he was in his late 20s, and he's sitting on the chair and he's delivering this lesson over to them. It was one of Rav Natan's first lessons over there. He's shaking on the chair and he's saying, when a person sits on a chair, he's a man.
What Torah is this?
This is the 6th Torah. When a person sits on a chair, he's a man.
And that chair is called silence.
He's a dam. We're going to see. So we see that in this vision, what was the whole source of this? That in the deep vision that nobody ever had like this before, it was shown above in Yechezkel, that Yechezkel had this vision, that he saw that there was the shape of a kisei above the firmament. Rabbi Nachman says that kisei was actually the upper point of the aleph. That was like the sun. That was the yud of the aleph. Okay, you guys missed it, but there's an aleph. This is the upper point. So in the beginning, when we received the Torah, all the Jewish people saw the lower point. Now Yechezkel, in his vision, he sees on top of the firmament the upper point. The lower point was the sapphire brick. The upper point is the sapphire stone, which, by the way, goes to show you a very deep secret, that Malchut and Keter are very connected. That what is first in thought is last in deed. That even though they are as far apart as possible, still, like Rabbi Nachman explains in the Kutimran, when a person begins to build a home, the closest the home ever gets to his original vision is when it's done. Every step along the way, it's not as close to the original vision as the final step. So too, this is the reason why Rabbi Nachman says that the world looks like it does. Because we're just looking at step, and it looks like total chaos. But the only point that the house actually looks like the original plan is at the very end of the building of the house. You guys know all about this because you're constantly building homes in this area. Yeah.
Is that why the Torah, which is made of sapphire, is transparent? That you could see
Through it.
mamish.
Also, we're going to see.
Maybe like that's the vav in the middle.
Also, we'll see. That this upper kisei, he says that the word kisei is similar to the Aramaic word mitkashia. Mitkashia, which in Hebrew, what's kisei? It means chair, throne. That a man sits on a throne, on a chair. But in Aramaic, the word kisei comes and is similar to the word mikashia, which means it's hidden. So to speak, this upper point is the hidden throne. It's the hidden kisei. Okay? Kamoshe Katuv, like the pasuk, which it says in Masechet Hagiga, that this is the source for not learning certain things unless you have an experienced teacher or you have reached a certain level yourself. Otherwise, it's forbidden to learn those things. This is the source for why the majority of the traditional Jewish world does not learn Kabbalah, or at least not publicly. It's because of this Gemara, where it says, "B'mufla mimecha al tidrosh." That which is wondrous from you, you cannot search. Uvam chuse, and that which is hidden mimecha from you, al tachkor, you can't investigate. Kavod Elokim haster davar. Like the pasuk says, the honor of Hashem, it's a hidden manner. Bechinat keter. So Rabbi Nachman's learning out a very deep Kabbalistic secret from the thing that's teaching you not to learn Kabbalah. That is, he's saying like this: anything which is hidden cannot be investigated. The kavod of kings, which people are constantly looking for, the kavod, the honor, or the ego, which we're trying constantly to bolster, this is the kavod of kings. And as a result of that, it's constantly being investigated. But if a person really wants to be close to Hashem, then he takes upon himself the investigation. And he responds not like he used to, with fighting, with sticking up for his honor, with talking back, with explaining constantly. But instead, he remains silent in the face of that. As a result of that, he ends up entering into the Aleph. He ends up entering into the oneness of Hashem, to the experience of godliness. And if he continues to run and return, that he becomes an expert in running and returning, like we said before, an expert at running after Hashem instead of running after the physical world. Through learning, through praying, through hibodedut, through sichat haverim, through talking to your friends about how to get closer to Hashem, through going to Uman for Rosh Hashanah, all the different means in which you can run after Hashem. But then you're going to see what happens along the way very often is you get punched, you get kicked, sidewalk slammed, power bomb through a table, steel chair to the head. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All about a rough childhood. You had a rough childhood.
Had a rough childhood. A lot of USA Channel, 9 p.m. on Monday nights. Okay.
I remember Channel 40, right? Channel 40.
Smack that. Yeah, this is the later. This is later. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do then? You have to hold on. You'll notice, when does a person think to himself, I don't know if it's worth it? When you get hit back, when the storm starts. Yeah. You get so pumped up, you get so excited, you start running after Hashem, you start going to the field, you start doing your bodedut, you start learning Rabbi Nachman's Torah. All of a sudden, what happens? You don't get your prayers answered. Yeah. Your parents are asking you, why are you spending so much time in the shul learning Torah? Why don't you go get a job, stop being a bum? Yeah. And all the different things that everybody hears. Or for me, why are you joining a cult, X, Y, and Z, and everybody has their own version. But if you continue and you remain silent, you don't respond, but you keep going. And you keep going, not because you're a superstar always. It doesn't mean you're always on fire. But it means that you hold on. That you hold on enough that when the storm ends, you start running again. And then it happens again, and you have to hold on. And then you run again. This is called becoming an expert in running and returning. If you do this enough, then you end up experiencing not the kavod of kings, which is an investigated matter, but you experience kavod Elokim. That is, nobody questions. Because you have touched the hidden light of Hashem, and that which is hidden, it's forbidden to investigate. Nobody can look at it. Nobody can touch it.
So what in this aspect is the running and what is the returning in terms of the Aleph? Is the running the top Aleph and the returning the bottom Aleph? Or is it the other way around?
The running in this case
is the
Aleph. Ability to run to the top Aleph.
Okay.
The top Yud in the Aleph. The returning is when you get knocked back down on the ground, or actually when you get to the next level and you start the Aleph all over again, and you have to remain silent. We're going to see this a little bit more clearly in a second, okay?
What does that mean, Rabbi? Whenever you're having your high?
Yeah. You run after Hashem as much as you can. Learn as much as you can. Pray as much as you can. Hibodedut as much as you can. Everything as much as you can. But when you get knocked down and your friend calls you and says, hey, you want to go to the club? And you wouldn't have thought to do it when you were running. But now you're getting knocked down. And now all of a sudden you're like, maybe this isn't for me, or maybe I'm not ready for this yet.
No, I'm saying I live this tour, not in this.
Everybody did.
Club,
yeah, like whatever, your own version of this, your own version of this. If even though you feel horrible, you simply say, I'm so sorry, I can't. You're not on fire. You're not learning right now. You're not praying right now. You're just holding on. That's called being silent. This is actually the key to tshuva. This is the key to tshuva.
And you don't act on it? Or let's say a person does go to the club from that high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now he's back into the high world. What are you referring to exactly of keeping silent? Does that mean not going to the club? Or does that mean, that's what that means?
Yeah.
Okay. Wouldn't that be higher than running? Because it feels no different. Like running feels like fire.
Yeah.
But you want to do it. It's easy.
Yeah, it's
right.
When you're on fire, you just go one after the other and it's easy.
So the other one's harder.
The other one is infinitely harder.
Yeah.
And it's horrible when you fall.
Right.
Because what he's saying in essence really is that when the chef is coming from down, from up down, right? Meaning from nothing to something that's Hashem created the world, right? We now have to bring that something back to nothing. That's like a much deeper chab than making it from nothing.
So this is the reason why not everybody's the Mashiach. The concept of the Mashiach is he's the Malchut. So on this Aleph, he's the lower point, which seems like it should be the upper point. No, to get there, the
So
crown.
he's always trying to grow.
He's constantly being squeezed, crushed. That's why he's
That's why I
called.
think you Mashiach.
Okay, so now like this, you see the kisei. Now he says this. This is the point that covers from above the vav of the aleph. Okay. Now 1 second here. This vav of the aleph, who are rakia? This is the rakia. So if we go back to the 10 sfirot for a second, everybody come back. 10 sfirot. We said that the aleph is the composite of all the 10 sfirot. You have the lower dot, the lower yod. This is the malchut. That's called being silent. You have the upper dot, which is called kavod elokim, that you've reached the pinnacle of connection to Hashem. You have become a vehicle for the light of Hashem completely. Okay, that's the highest point. That's called the ketzer. That's the crown. That can't be investigated. What's in between is the vav. That vav, what's the gematria of a vav? 6. Why is the vav 6? Because there's 6 sfirot that make up the vav. Chesed, Gevur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Is represented by Yaakov Avinu.
So it's like a gateway.
It's a gateway, very good. It's the place where heaven and earth kiss. Or in this case, it's the tzaddik. The tzaddik is Yesod Olam. It's like the vav. Okay? Are you with me? Now he says like this. Rakia is also like Shemayim. The concept of Rakia is like Shemayim. And the Gemara, the same Masechet Chagiga says, Eish Umayim. What is Shemayim? It's Eish and Mayim. It's the concept of fire and water. What does that have to do with us? Right? What does that have to do with the experience of being silent in the face of embarrassment? Because what happens when a person is silent?
His waters are boiling on the inside.
Wow, his waters are boiling on the inside. All the different chambers are going on. He becomes embarrassed. And when he becomes embarrassed, his face starts changing colors. And he says, this is the concept of Shemayim. This is a very deep thing. Because on paper, all these things are the worst human experiences. You don't want any of them. 1 second. 1 second. But when you're silent, that's the lower point of the aleph. But when you're silent, you now feel embarrassed because you're not responding. So your face is turning colors. Now you've attained the vav of the aleph. And if you hold on long enough, you get to the upper point, and then you're a man, and then you're music.
No, music is
Rabbi,
something.
so the yud that's up, Hashem is with you, and the yud that's down, Hashem is still with you, and there's a vav. That's all 26.
Yeah.
Hashem is with you both on the ups and the down.
For sure, but what we're saying is your ability to actually experience him is that you have to be a real man. And Rabbi Nachman's teaching you that the essence of being a man is to be silent.
Isn't it a lot of times to do with discipline?
Of course.
It's all about discipline. Person never.
First of all, you think everything's about discipline because you're a karate master. The reason, listen, it's really more about bittul of the ego. That's one thing. I mean, to be disciplined as well, it has to do with bittul of the ego. The only way to be disciplined is you need to nullify what you want to do for what you need to do.
What comes first?
It's all one thing.
So the tool of the ego is self-discipline.
Of course. 100%. This guy loves it. Self-discipline. Okay, so
Is this somehow connected to the presence of Hashem floating above the waters? That there was water, the concept of water being below before anyone speaks. So it's silence technically because Hashem hadn't spoken the world into creation yet.
I'm thinking of Simon Garfunkel, The Sounds of Silence right now. You should know classic rock. You guys know like techno.
We know stuff.
Oh yeah, really? Oh man, I don't. Well, okay. So anyway, you're onto something. So he says like this: Asian Mayim, your face is changing colors. You think it's getting worse and worse. It's really getting better and better. By the way, just as a side note, what is the English title that they have used for Rav Natan's autobiography? It's really called Yemei Moranot, that is the days of our master Natan, but it's called Through Fire and Water. Now it's very interesting because this whole Torah, the students of Rabbi Nachman, they saw this as a passing down from Rabbi Nachman to Rav Natan, that he would be so to speak, the one who would take over after he left. But if you look at Rav Natan's whole entire life, what you're going to see is it was all the concept of this Torah. He was constantly being embarrassed publicly because of his allegiance to Rabbi Nachman, his belief in him, and his trying to disperse his teachings. He was silent every single time. He never responded. And in the face of the busha, there was no comment back. Why did he do that? The reason was this Torah. He said that this Torah was his inspiration his entire life.
It's not by irony, it's love.
Right. And what is that? That's through fire and water, meaning when your face is changing colors.
The whole book.
Yes.
He's running
The whole entire book.
The whole book is running.
The whole entire
Could
book.
be possibly also because it's the two opposites.
Right.
When you're bucky in both opposites, that's called Adam.
Right. Very good. That's beautiful. You got it. And when you could be silent, the lower point of the aleph, and you can experience the busha, the changing colors of your face, and you don't respond, now you're called a man, Adam, and you're sitting on the kisei, you're sitting on the throne. The appearance of a man that is sitting above. Kileit Adam below aleph. Because there is no Adam, says Tikkun Zohar, without an aleph. V'zeh otiot Adam, and these are the letters of Adam. It's all in the word Adam itself. Because if you look at Adam, it's an aleph and then dam. What's dam? Hainu ayadei dom lashem. By being silent while you are being embarrassed, that's the dam part. That prior to this, you were just not dome, you weren't silent, you were dam, you were just blood. Meaning you were responding only to protect your ego at all times. And then you didn't have the aleph, you weren't really a man. Comes Rabbi Nachman to say, if you want to experience Hashem, you're going to need to become a real man. To become a real man, you're going to have to start being silent. To turn the dam, the blood, into dome, into silence. And by turning the dam into dome, then all of a sudden the aleph comes on. And now there's Adam sitting on the throne. There's Adam, he's sitting on the throne.
This is the concept of Adam Katmon.
Yes.
Because that's like, this is you go through higher levels of consciousness.
Yes.
Paul Shem went through.
Yes.
And when you get to like the highest level,
It's called Adam Kadmon.
You become like a perfect tzaddik. You reach a level of Adam.
That's exactly right. It's called primordial man. Primordial man. Adam Kadmon. Very good.
Paul Shem book is full of.
Yeah, of course. But a lot of references to this. Yeah. So when you get to the highest point, it's called, so to speak, you've reached a man which is become imbued only with godliness. Like Moshe was at the end of his life, the Ish Elokim, like Adam Arisha was before the Chet, that he's called Adam Kadmon, primordial man. So this is all the man sitting on the throne. Because the middle of the aleph is the firmament. It encompasses all the colors. Hainu abusha, meaning embarrassment. And the lower point of the aleph, this is the silence, and they're not responding, not in your mouth and not in your heart. Like the pasuk says, that the earth, the world, is the physical universe, is the footstool for me. Hashem says it's the stool of my foot. And what does Rabbi Nachman says? Hadom raglai, dome, silence. That silence is the beginning of experiencing my feet, meaning the lowest aspect of the revelation of godliness in a person's life. You need to have dome, you need to have silence. Like the Malchut, you need to have nothing of your own, like the moon, like David HaMelech, like Rachel Imenu.
What does kingship mean, Malchut, if you have nothing of your own?
That's how you have a king.
Because he's nothing.
Because concept of kingship is those who are under the king. How can they have a king? Only if they anoint him. How do they anoint him? By having no ratzon of their own, and only having the ratzon of their king.
Being silent to their command.
Being silent.
Yes,
Okay. This is the concept of the nekuda, the vowel point, the little tiny dot, which is corresponding to the bat ayin, the point in the eye that's black. Why is it black when you have all the colors surrounding it? Because the colors surrounding it represent the rakia. They represent the changing of the colors. But you have the point of the eye that's dark. It has no light of its own. That's the beginning of seeing. This is the concept of under his feet. Vanakuda al Yona, what's the higher point? It's the Kisa de Mitkashya, the hidden throne that the man sits on. Bechinat Teshuva. This is the concept of Teshuva. That when a person is able to finally sit on the throne, he sits on the Kisei, he becomes Adam because he turned all of his dome, all of his blood, all of his ego, and he is, one second, and he has transmuted it into silence. He turned the dam into dome. And he achieves the ability not to respond even in the face when the dome, the silence, even leads to embarrassment. There's nothing at all. Then he becomes Adam. They came to Rabbi Nachman and they said to him, Rav Natan specifically, everybody's speaking out against everything that you say. Why don't you ever say anything? What did he say? I answer all questions with silence. Why? Because he wanted to become the man.
It negates the wisdom of silence.
That's how you become mujik.
All right, so when I get bashed, also
Yes, shut
in
up.
terms of, in terms of the fact that I learned citizens, just shut up.
You shouldn't say anything.
Rabbeinu.
David, Sha'ag, listen, you gotta be on silent for a little bit over here, so it can be a music. You need to just put yourself on mute until the end of the class. Then we'll have questions, okay?
I have a statement.
No statements either.
All
Silence,
right.
por favor.
All right.
I'm muting you.
Wow. He's literally living the Torah right now.
No questions. Check it. I'm gonna start using this just so you guys can achieve the highest levels of consciousness. Okay. This is the concept of teshuvah. Like it says, kavod elokim aster davar. The honor of Hashem, it's a hidden matter. It's completely hidden. Like the pasuk says also, hidden from yourself, you cannot investigate that which is hidden. That above the rakia you have the semblance of a throne. And there is man sitting on that kisei. Like the man that's sitting above. Okay. So now listen to what he says. This is the second point, which is very critical for all of us. And this is fundamental to you achieving the purpose of your life. Ready? He's going to take a detour seemingly, but it's very connected to this, and it's going to add understanding of everything we've learned so far. This is all the concept of the unity, the union, the becoming one of the sun and the moon. That the sun illuminates the moon. And is made a unity between Moshe and Yoshua. When Rabbi Nachman was finished teaching this teaching, he says any single time that a teacher and his students come together, it is literally a replay of Moshe, Yoshua, and the tent that they were in. Okay? In this case, who is the son? It's Moshe Rabbeinu, the tzaddik Yesod Olam, that he becomes Adam sitting on the kisei.
Is this why eclipse happened between Moshe and Yeshua?
One second. And then you have Yoshua ben Nun. That Yoshua has nothing of his own. That Yoshua never leaves his tent. He never leaves the rakia of Moshe. And because of that, he was able to receive and experience all of the light of Moshe and to give off a diminished version of that, which on paper might seem like a lacking, which the elders at the time felt that it was. But ultimately, it was the key to all of them getting to the land of Israel, because the light of Moshe was too intense for that generation to experience. And what they needed was Yoshua to be able to take all of that light and to give it over in a diminished way. Rav Natan said that when the Jewish people are not holding at a level to be able to experience the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, he must pass away. And then you're going to have to connect to his students in order to receive that light. This is Moshe and Yoshua, because the Gemara in Bava Batra says, Pnei Moshe kifnei chama. The face of Moshe was literally like the light of the sun. V'da nekuda el Yona, that's the higher point of the Aleph. Bechina tisei, the concept of this hidden throne that was hidden, not because it's actually hidden, it's hidden because it's so intense that you can't experience it.
Oreganos.
Right. Bechinat Moshe. This is the concept of Moshe. Kamoshe Katuv. V'chiso kashemesh negdi. Like the pasuk says, and the throne will be like the sun before me. It's speaking about Moshe. Above the firmament will be the semblance of a kisei. It's all speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu. But Nakuda Tachtona hi Yoshua, and the lower point of the Aleph, the point of silence, the point of not responding, the point of being like the moon, that you have nothing of your own, and then you become the perfect vessel to receive the light of the sun. Then you become like Yoshua. You become like the Levanah. You become like the moon. Bechinat v'tachat raglav k'maaseh livnat da Levanah. That under his feet was the appearance of the livnat. That is the brick. But the word brick, Rabbi Nachman explains, comes from the same exact lashon as Levanah. So the brick that the Jewish people saw at Har Sinai, that was like the Levanah, the moon. We know that in the days of Mashiach, there's a nevuah that the light of the moon will be as bright as the light of the sun. That originally the light of Yoshua ben Nun was just as intense as the light of Moshe Rabbeinu. The light of the student was just as intense as that of the teacher.
Right, because he made himself nothing, and when you're feeling nothing with nothing, it's unlimitedness, mamish.
But the moon said, the moon complained, whatever this means, the Gemara explains, the moon complained that if we both are giving off the same intensity of light, so people are not going to be able to handle it. You need to have one king with one crown. So he says, okay, good. So you're diminished. Okay. So from now on until the coming of the Mashiach, the only way to experience the light of the moon, which you need in order to experience the light of the sun, is by being silent, by diminishing yourself. That its curse actually ends up becoming its blessing. And we're going to see at the end of time that that is actually the greatest revelation of godliness. And that's the reason why it's so hard. And this is the Malchut of Mashiach. And this is why he's called Yoshua ben Nun.
The moon is always running and returning.
The moon is always running and returning, right? It's always waxing and waning. Very good, beautiful. But ultimately, it's going to stop. And the light of the moon is actually going to be just as bright as the light of the sun.
Is it weird to see the moon in the morning? Like during daytime?
Yeah, it's weird. But
It's out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the vav that's in the aleph, what's separating between Moshe and Yoshua? This is the key. It's the rakia. Hu bechinat ohel. This was the ohel that it said about Yoshua. He never left his tent. Now, how do we have any type of hint as to what is this ohel that he never left? Very simply, it was Moshe's Torah. He never left Moshe's Torah, whether he was with him or he wasn't with him, whether he was learning it or he was living it. But no matter what he was doing, he was always by the tent of Moshe. He was mamish a chassid. He was the first chassid. So as a result of that, he got to experience the light of Moshe Rabbeinu. Hu rakia, and this is Shamayim. This is like the rakia. By the way, what's the gematria of Ohel? Ohel is 36. How many tzaddikim are there in every generation? 36 tzaddikim. But Rabbi Nachman teaches and the Arizal teaches that all those 36 tzaddikim are really extensions and branches of one tzaddik called the tzaddik Yesod Olam, Moshe Rabbeinu. So how do you connect to Moshe? You do it through his students, to the tzaddikim. And as a result of that, you never leave his tent. Then you can be like Yoshua ben Nun. A lot of things to contemplate. Too much. Okay. The tent alludes to the firmament because it says, "V'yim tachem ke'ohel l'shavet." The pasuk says, and he stretched them out like a tent to dwell in, specifically to dwell in. You need to make this place your home. Uchtiv, and it says, "Notez shamayim kiriyah," who spreads the heavens like a sheet. What are this? What is these sheets? Yeriyat ohel. It's like the sheet of the ohel, like a tent.
This tent reference is all over the Torah.
Yeah, of course.
The aleph, the line is the sky.
That's right.
And inside the tent is the higher yod and the lower yod, Moshe and Yoshua.
You got it.
Tent makes the whole aleph together.
Perfect. You got it. That's exactly right.
He's attentive.
Okay. That's good. So Abraham said that you see it, that you have Moshe, he's the higher point of the Aleph, which is the concept of Kavod Elokim. He has completely nullified himself entirely. As a result of this, now he's the man. You have Yoshua ben Nun, that he's constantly silent when he's by Moshe. And he's silent in the face of those who oppress him for being his student. He's not responding. He just continues never to leave his tent, which is the Vav. And as a result of that, he becomes the redeemer of the Jewish people. He leads them into the land of Israel. He overcomes all of the 31 kings of Canaan, which represents all the forces of negativity in your life. So you don't have to be Moshe. You don't have to be the Tzaddik Yesod Olam. You can take the pressure off. But you do have to be like Yoshua ben Nun. You do have to be a very, very, very high-level student. And the way you do that is through bittul to the tzaddik, hikashrut to the tzaddik. And as a result of that, you never leave his tent, and you end up doing teshuvah. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya, it says, and with this we'll end, make the heart of this people fat. Stop up its ears and seal its eyes, lest it see with its eyes, it hears with its ears, and he understands with its heart. And so he does tshuva and he's healed. Yeshaya is speaking about the end of time. The Jewish people are going to have geula. We're going to experience refuah. But Chazal teach that refuah can't come without teshuva. That is that we're all going to be running and returning at the end. And through this running and returning, what feels like tremendous challenge and obstacles and difficulties, but us holding on and not giving up, that is what's going to cause us to be able to be healed, to do teshuvah. And then our eyes will be opened up and our ears will be able to hear and our heart is going to be able to understand. Okay? Listen to what Rabbi Nachman says here. The Chisei Elyon, this higher Chisei, the higher point of the Aleph, Haynu Nekuda Elyona Nechleket Shalosh Tipin. As opposed to the lower part of the Aleph, which is that dot, we said it's connected to the vowel point Chirik. That's the one dot. But then you have the higher point, the higher Kisei. And even though it also looks like a dot, if you can imagine in your mind, you guys all need to focus for a second. This dot is actually made up of 3 dots. If you go back with me to the beginning of the explanation that we did, we have the Aleph. The lower point of the Aleph is Malchut, right? It's the Nekuda, it's the Chirik, it's the 1 point. That's silence. Then you have the Vav, that's the embarrassment that you feel, the changing of colors. That's 6. Now you have the upper point. How many is that? 6 plus 1 plus 1 is 8, but we said there's 10 sfirot in the Aleph. So where are the 3? There's 2 missing. The answer is that the upper point actually encompasses 3. So this upper point, the highest point, actually has 3 little points that make the 1 big point. Everybody with me? If you can imagine for a second, point, point, point. So if you have them all really close together, you're looking from very far away, it only looks like 1 point. But the closer you get, you see that it's really 1, 2, and 1 under. That's corresponding to the vowel point that's called a segol. A dot, dot, and a lower dot. And the Zohar teaches that the segul is the sun. And we learned what is the sun? Hainu Pnei Moshe, that's the face of Moshe. That is Chabad, not the Chabad that you're thinking of in your local street, or when you go on vacation to Cancun and you want to have kosher food, or when you visit the Ohel over here to be by the tzaddik. But Chabad, according to Kabbalah, actually means, and this is the source for why they call themselves this, Chochmah Bina and Da'at, that the highest level of teshuvah, when you finally experience teshuvah, it's the revelation of Chochmah Bina and Da'at, the highest levels of consciousness. These are corresponding to those 3 dots of the segul, that they are the higher point of the Aleph. Because Moshe's whole essence is Da'at. What is he giving over to you? Chochmah Bina and Da'at. The way you get that is by learning his Torah, and you're silent. By doing those 3 things, you ultimately achieve teshuvah. And then you're healed.
One more time, by doing ultimate those 3 things, you're doing.
That is, you're silent in the face of adversity. And you learn how to be baki in returning, meaning that you don't get thrown off. It doesn't mean that you're flying. It doesn't mean that you're excited. It doesn't mean that you're running. but you don't go back to old behaviors. You don't throw off the old completely. You simply hold on with all your might. Okay? That's the lower point. That's called Yoshua ben Nun. Then you have the Vav. That is the embarrassment that you feel while that's happening, because everybody says to you, what are you doing? Don't you see it's not working? Don't you see your prayers aren't getting answered? Don't you see that the Torah is not helping you? Don't you think there's a reason why nobody suggests you should learn Rabbi Nachman's teachings? And all the litany of different things that people say. And what is that? That's the Vav. You hold on. And you do that by learning his Torah, the Tzaddik's Torah. Okay? Continuously learning his Torah. And then ultimately you have the higher point, Adam himself. The Tzaddik Yesod Moshe Rabbeinu. That's called being healed. That ultimately when you have true hikashrut with him, which only happens after a period of time, you can't simply start to have your, what's it called? The flame logo, Eish Shali on everything that you own. And you start listening to techno music and think you have hikashrut to Rabbi Nachman. To have true hikashrut with the Tzaddik Yesod Olam, you need to go through tremendous adversity, trials, and tribulations, and never to give up. If you do, you get to experience the light of the Tzaddik. You get to experience the light of the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life, the Or HaGanuz, all the most beautiful, amazing things. You bear with me? That's called teshuvah. Then you're healed. Got it? Okay. Any questions from tonight's lesson? Go.
You said that it's not good to tell people the teachings of Rabbi Nachman.
No. I didn't.
What did you?
I said that you shouldn't respond in the face of embarrassment or criticism. Silence.
Accept it and move on with it.
No, why I was going to say that you mean like Kabbalah, in a sense where people are not allowed to learn this because they would
There's
logical.
There's going to be many reasons why people tell you not to learn this. One person's going to tell you because it's Kabbalistic. Another person's going to tell you because you don't even understand what you're learning.
Don't like Kabbalah because it's Kabbalistic.
Another person's going to tell you don't learn it because Rabbi Nachman passed away 200 years ago and it's a Avodah Zarah. Another person's going to tell you don't learn it because this is not even what Rabbi Nachman meant. And all of the teachings that we have are from his students and we can't rely on them. And you're going to have a million reasons.
I wanted to say that if someone were to ask you, what did you learn? And like you said, who are you? Like, what are you doing? You would say, I'm Simcha, the Simcha. So basically you would say, I'm learning Simcha. Yeah.
Sure, it's good. But you can also teach them what you're learning. It's fine.
You can teach them this because it's included with Kabbalah.
Rob, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Does this, when you say this applies, does this apply across all aspects of your life? Does this apply in business situations? Does this apply
With the other gender?
with the other? I mean, does this apply to silence, or is it specifically as it relates to criticism about learning this material?
It it applies to criticism about anything, because the whole entire concept of teshuvah is that my ability to connect to Hashem is dependent on me not having an ego. The surest, Rabbi Nachman says, proof that a person has nullified his ego and therefore has now become a vessel to experience the light of godliness is when he's silent in the face of criticism.
Tough stuff.
Good luck.
Very pushy, though.
Yeah, this is a hard lesson. This is not just hard to carry out; it's also heavy. But you should know Rav Natan said that this was the source of tremendous encouragement for him his whole entire life. And anybody who's a student of Rabbi Nachman knows, I'm walking around with a smile on my face every day. I never said a bad thing to anybody. I never hurt a fly. I get criticized constantly. I hear horrifying things. But I heard this Torah, and I know that in my back pocket, this is an opportunity for me. It doesn't mean at the moment it's sweet. It doesn't mean that it's, lollipops and roses. But it does mean that I'm getting a greater opportunity to elevate closer to Hashem through this. Like the student of Rabbi Nachman said, in truth, if we could, we should really go prepare ourselves to get embarrassed and criticized by going to the mikveh and making a whole entire celebration out of it. But because we never know when it's coming, we're not able to do such a celebration.
In that case, like if someone, for example, goes up to you and embarrasses you, you're an apicurus.
Yeah.
Does your response have to be a fake response? Like, can you fake crying, so that way they not meaning, you know what I mean? Like in the back of your mind, you know, oh, okay, this mom is the greatest thing for me ever, and I want to smile. And sometimes when people like ish on me, I just smile at them.
Yeah.
And they just ish on me even more for smiling at them. You know,
Okay, good.
I'm saying, like, can you fake the crying?
Why would you do that?
That way they're not the one, they're not, so they don't feel that they're the cause of your suffering.
When the person is coming to criticize you, it's not really them, it's Hashem.
100%.
No, so the point is, you don't have to worry about it. The whole entire point is to realize it's Hashem. Hashem wants you to be close to him. Like we said in the very beginning of this Torah, you're going for the fine smelling scent. That fine selling I can't even say it. It's fine, the fine smelling scent, as opposed to the gasoline, the kerosene that we learned about the story in the Gemara. That when you go to buy gasoline, they just tell you go get it.
Right.
There's no waiting. But when you want to get that sweet smelling scent, I said it, Hashem. When you say that or you do that, all of a sudden you're gonna have to wait. Because why? The person who's selling it to you, he wants to smell it with you. When a person really legitimately wants to get close to Hashem, he needs to know that anything that happens to him during that journey is mamish Hashem, because he loves you and he wants the best for you. Yes.
So I was reading day by day, and he talk about Rabbi Nachman. He says, I won't really talk about this, but he said that I have the power to bring Mashiach. There's nobody like me.
That was in today's day by day, right?
A few days ago. I'm a little behind.
And you thought, wow, the humility, it's unbelievable.
I'm saying to myself, is this, I'm the greatest, and there's nobody like me. So how do you translate it? I'm not understanding to the highest level.
Right.
There's deep things in here.
Yeah.
Is there a way I can understand this?
So the question was,
The same thing.
everyone had this. You should know every person who they read, you know, not Rabbi Nachman's teachings, because you don't see it there. Yeah, but when you read his biography that Rav Natan wrote about him, and you hear his conversations and how he spoke about himself, it's quite startling how he talked about himself. Okay. However, if you
know that you are the dopest of the
no,
you can say I'm the dopest, but if you're not, you can't say that.
One second. So Rabbi Nachman says not like that. Because Moshe wrote that he was the most humble man who ever lived.
No, it's not.
No, you can't say no. This is literally what Rabbi Nachman says. He says that there's levels of humility. You think that the highest level of humility is, I say I'm nothing. But you know what the real highest level of humility is? I tell you exactly what I am and I feel nothing from it.
My mom said the same thing today. I'm just for him. Wow.
Okay.
So the highest level is to say that I'm nothing.
No, the highest level is to be able to say whatever it is and feel nothing from it. To feel literally, there's no ego at all. By the way, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also spoke about himself like this in the Zohar. A lot of people don't know that. And the Arizal as well. He also talked about himself in this way.
Also.
The Baal Shem Tov also. You know, the Baal Shem Tov is an amazing story. I love this story. He's by Rav Nachman of Horodenker. Yeah. Rav Nachman of Horodenker, who Rabbi Nachman was named after. Yeah. So this is an amazing story. Rav Nachman of Horodenker, he actually was trying to do teshuvah in that very intense way that you guys have heard of in the past, and maybe you were encouraged to do. Fasting, bitterness, you need to kill yourself, you need to feel horrible about yourself, yeah? So he used to like mortify himself in every possible way, including in Ukraine, going into the freezing cold mikveh. And he would then, after the mikveh, even though it was the winter and it was freezing cold, and I'm sure the mikveh itself was just ice, he came out and he sat by his oven. The only ability for him to regain feeling in his body was by sitting on the fiery hot oven while it was on for hours until he regained and thawed off his body and he started to feel it again. After doing this, after every day, he like went to sleep one day and he's like, oh my gosh,
why do I keep doing this?
It's too much. And I think he started crying, I think, and he fell asleep and he had a dream. And in the dream, I think it was Sari Main who came to him. Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah, and said, There's two ways to do teshuvah. There's one that's very bitter, and there's one that's very sweet. Hashem likes it more when you do the one that's sweet. And he realized from this dream that there was a figure that he had heard of many times, which he was opposed to seeing, like everybody at the time, was the Baal Shem Tov. This person who seemingly had a whole new derech in serving Hashem, and it was completely different than anything before. And it was termed, like, so to speak, the sweet version of teshuvah. And that's why everybody was concerned about it, because it wasn't the usual grim
Reaper.
reaper, fire and brimstone way, but it was full of love, and it was full of meditation and unity and singing and higher levels of experience. The complete opposite. So people are very weary of this, and he realized from this dream he needed to go visit the Baal Shem Tov. He ended up becoming one of his biggest students, and as a result of that, the Baal Shem Tov actually got him married to his daughter, who they ended up giving birth to Rabbi Nachman's daughter. One second. Yeah. They ended up giving birth to Rabbi Nachman's mother. Sorry.
No, wait, you sure?
Jewish geography.
Isn't Rabbi Nachman, if we're doing Simcha's father?
So 1 second. Let me get this right. The mother, Rabbi Nachman's mother, is Fega.
Yeah. Who came from Adel.
Who came from the Baal Shem Tov.
Right. So it's not the mother's side. It's the father.
Oh, good. Very good.
His father's Simcha.
Right. So his father
was
Simcha, his father was Nachman. Yeah, very good.
'Cause-
Okay, good.
That was the other
So we
side
got
of
the whole chain. Yeah. Okay, good. So listen to this. So towards the end of the Baal Shem Tov's life, it became very clear that there's this love of the land of Israel, which obviously Rabbi Nachman got, and he taught about very often. And Rav Nachman for Denker, like Rabbi Nachman later on, it became his mission, like, I have to go to the land of Israel. I have to go to the land of Israel. So he came to his Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, and he said, can I go now? So he said, you can go, but I want you to go to the mikveh first and tell me what you see. So he goes, okay. Goes to the mikveh. He comes back and he said, Nachman, what did you see? And he said, I saw Yerushalayim. Because that's amazing. What else did you see? He said, I saw the Beit HaMikdash rebuilt. He goes, oh my gosh, it's amazing. He goes, what else did you see? He said, I saw the Kodesh inside. Oh.
You know what he was thinking about?
What are you thinking? You saw it.
Oh,
He saw it in the mikveh. He saw it in the mikveh. Rav Nachman Hordenker. He saw all this in the mikveh.
No, but I'm saying, how did the Baal Shem Tov know what
He didn't. He's asking him, what did you see?
Oh, so he didn't know what he said.
Seemingly, okay. Then all of a sudden he says the Kodesh. He goes, okay, and what else did you say? He said, I saw the Kodesh Kadoshim. He goes, oh my gosh. He goes, did you see the Aron in there? That was the place that hold the tablets, the Luchot, which is the highest revelation of godliness in the whole entire Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash and the Kodesh and the Kadoshim. It was in the, yeah. Did you see the Aron in there? He said, actually, no, I didn't. He said, yeah, because he's in Mejibush. Meaning he was talking about himself.
So why didn't you just say, look at me? Why do you have to give him a roundabout?
And he understood from this that he shouldn't go to Israel until he passes away, which is what happened. Okay?
Basically, they know who they are.
What? They know who they are. He didn't feel anything from this.
Another quick question.
Can we see if anyone else has a question for us? Okay.
That was a very long answer, by the way.
Okay. Before you have a question, let's see if anybody over here has a question. Okay. There's no question on the bottom here. Go ahead.
Mike,
You have a question? Question?
I haven't finished, I can say that.
Okay. Khidr is going to wait.
How do you
Question.
explain this? So, a person that you're trying to teach to defend yourself, meaning and stand up for yourself when somebody's talking to you or putting you down. A person that's not religious, a kid that's being bullied.
Yeah.
So how do you say, it goes down to Hashem? Like, and how do you?
Well, it's a steer for your
He's asking-
business.
Where's
It's
the
a
fine
challenge
line?
for you.
Where's the fine line between opening up versus not?
Good. The
It's
question.
very
The
simple.
question is, what about people protecting themselves? That they're in danger. What do? They say, "Hit me one more time." Yeah.
Instead of getting bullied. In
Oh, he's
school.
getting bullied in school. Okay.
Bullied
So
in that situation.
Okay. So you should know again here. What are you teaching your children? If you're going to put them in the garden, in the gan over here, so they're going to teach them, you have to say something. If you bring them to Gan Amuna, to Garden of Amuna, then you teach them it's from Hashem. a person should not put himself in danger. If he's in danger, he needs to do whatever he can to get out of danger.
Which means if you need to speak up, you have to speak up.
Which means that whatever you have to do to make sure you're not in physical danger, you need to do. However, anything beyond that, anything excessive to that, which is really what you normally do, it's not the concept of defending yourself. It's just you feeling that you need to say something so you don't get stepped on or walked over. Rabbi Nachman says silence.
I understand it's for an adult, person that learns. I understand. But now we're talking about
A kid.
I don't think he
Child.
emphasized the adult part here. He meant that for everybody.
you can't tell. I mean, a kid that's going to school is being bullied and it's called stupid and this and that. So what are you gonna say? Remain silent. His ego is down. It's no self-esteem, no confidence. He doesn't believe in himself. So you educate and teach him
Right.
how to stand up for yourself. Well, I mean, I deal with Jewish kids,
I
but
understand.
I can't say, oh, you have to have a munah. This practical, do it. Are you kidding me? You know, even though that is the truth, it is.
Wait, so is the person telling you to stand up for himself doing a disfavor for the
So
child?
It's
that's
not-
what I'm
it's all
saying.
about
Am I doing the wrong
context.
thing?
It's all about context. It's better if he sticks up for himself. If the other version of that is he ends up losing all of his self-confidence and he ends up becoming suicidal and all the terrible things that happens when kids when they're bullied. But we're saying that there's a higher level than all of this.
100%.
That's all. And the higher level than all of this,
Am I okay saying this?
and the one that you need to focus on, is the internalization of Amunah. And the internalization of Amunah is, I don't respond to being insulted.
Rabbi Kalmus.
Other aspect. Am I held responsible for the wrong things?
Yeah, sure.
Rabbi Kalmus, I have a question.
One second. You have to do the best that you can. Obviously, you want to give those children the tools that they need. They're coming to learn karate, so you should teach them karate.
Right.
But if you could find a way to bring in Emunah as the number one form of self-defense.
Because I teach you the strongest weapon you have is your voice.
Very good. But the
So-
voice that Rabbi Nachman is saying is the strongest weapon that you have is in the field. It's not with people. When Rabbi Nachman speaks about holy chutzpah, he's not talking about your response to people. He's talking about the chutzpah that you have by not responding at all and then going to the field and crying to Hashem.
So what Rabbi Nachman's saying really is that there's 23 hours in your day where you remain silent and the 1 hour where you lash out
Yeah,
to the brim.
to Hashem.
I understand that.
Okay. Shlomo, yes, go ahead.
The same way I just
Well, I think you might have just actually answered it because my question was, so a lot of comments and questions were coming around. This is more geared towards the physical or other people, problematic situations or occurrences that problematic events that occur with embarrassment as far as somebody's telling me something, criticizing me or putting me down, belittling me or whatever the case may be. However, something that I was dealing with that we spoke about was more of a mental struggle and a mental battle that I was dealing with. And it's not so much embarrassment that I was feeling, but to be silent. But this is all occurring in my mind while I was silent. So in a situation like this, to hold on, to keep on going, to not let go, to keep on striving and thriving for more, for greater and more progress. What to do in situations like that, where it's not necessarily somebody else that's embarrassing me or something else that's coming towards me from an external source, but more from an internal source.
Right. So with the internal source, it's the ability to hold on, like we said before. It's the ability not to give up, not to get thrown off completely, and just to hold on until you get Yeshua from Hashem, that Hashem sends you the right advice, the right teaching, the right lesson, the right experience that you need in order to move on and to elevate from that place. So it's this constant experience of like a boxer almost, that you're punching, right? That's you learning, praying, Amunah, Hibodedut, all these things. And then when you start to get knocked back, you simply have to stay up, but you don't hit the ground, because once you hit the ground, it's over.
I'm gonna get you a pair of boxing gloves that says heavyweight champion. Because you're killing the game, bro.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. I actually prefer the heavyweight title thing where they go like this. This is really
Because you like wrestling, right? I'll get you
Yeah.
the belt. I hear you make so many comments
I
about
already bought
wrestling.
Benny said he already got it from me, but he's lying. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I want to
Mike, you have any
Rabbeinu.
questions? Any last questions?
Personal question, Rabbi.
Personal questions.
I want to
One-on-one
ask you a
questions.
question.
Go.
In this 10th period, why isn't God there but Keter is?
So Keter is really the composite of the three Sfirot beloved, the Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. And we're seeing that is coming from Teshuvah. That when a person does Teshuvah and he connects to Moshe, Moshe is giving him over Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at.
So why usually in pictures you will never see God itself? You can only see 10, but there's God that makes it 11.
Because Da'at is really a composite of Chokhmah and Bina together as one.
Ah,
Right?
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, David Meirav, you have waited a long time. Rabbeinu, you have a statement?
Yeah. It
What's
says about
No, but you have to
if
say Rabbeinu first.
Rabbeinu.
No, Rabbeinu. How do you say that?
Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say, like for a person to keep quiet, it says in Pirkei Avot, if you want to show yourself that you're smart, you have to be silent.
Very good. You
Yep.
got it. And
Siyag
silence
la
is the gate to wisdom. That's what it says.
Siyag la chokhmah shtika.
You got it.
I was reading in Pirkei Avot, it says that you have to sit by the dust of the feet of the tzaddikim by your table.
Right.
What does that mean, the dust of the feet? Because you're only gonna chop Torah once you become dust
To their feet.
to their.
It's like the dome, like to the
Yeah,
footstool.
Yeah, exactly.
Very nice. You have your chiddush? You want to
Betty.
end this off?
Didn't we have a thing where like the olive, the valve in it is like sloped like
Yeah.
a mountain,
Yes.
and Moshe represents the top,
Oh.
and Yeshua represents the bottom, and it says that Moshe went up the mountain, Yeshua was at the foot of the mountain.
Wow.
And also it's the same thing with Avraham Avinu when he went up the mountain. He told Eliezer, the pasuk is almost identical. It's Eliezer to wait at the foot of the mountain, and Eliezer was like his Yeshua.
Very deep. Very nice,
A lot
Abraham.
of parallels.
Yes.
Good. You have any questions?
All of them were answered.
All of them were answered with silence. Okay. Everybody have an amazing night. Tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Likutei Halachot. And then we'll talk about if we're gonna have a Thursday night class or not. I'm not sure yet because it's my wife's birthday. Okay, we'll speak.
Word? April 8th?